This is going to be an amazing congress, topping Glasgow, topping Vienna. And just so to speak, it's also doing that in numbers already, right? We already had about 3,250 pre-registered delegates. We don't know who's coming in here during the course of the next 4 days. We have over 1,600 abstracts that were submitted, over 1,000 presenters. So this is an amazing scope and pile of content and about innovation, about the future of transplantation. And the people who are actually in charge of that, who are in charge of most of the stuff that you are going to be seeing in the Transplant Live shows, is the ESOT Scientific Committee. And I'm very proud and honored that at the moment I'm joined by 3 members of this scientific committee. Maarten from Belgium, Olivier Thaunat from Lyon in France, and Gabriel Oniscu. Welcome. Thank you, guys. What we'd like to do is actually look forward to some of the highlights in the program, and let's start with you personally, Maarten. What is one of the most exciting sessions you're looking forward to?
Me personally, I was involved with the organization of a very interesting session which is called Transplantation 2.0.15, in which we try to bring together the newer initiatives in big data, in social media, with the world of transplantation. And that is something that has not been covered in previous conferences and was some kind of nice thing to do.
And what about social media and transplantation? Is this about surgeons tweeting their latest operation?
Well, of course, transplantation is much more than only surgeons. We have a lot of patients. We have patients who are involved. We have patient organizations. And we have all the stuff around, for instance, the allocation of organs, which is a societal issue. And so, for instance, at the first session of this, at the first presentation of this session, we have Adam Pena from the United States, who will discuss how we can get Facebook and social media involved in getting more living donors, for instance, and getting more positive registrations for donation of organs, which is a very good thing to happen in our field.
Exactly. Well, we recently, I'm from the Netherlands. In Holland, we recently had a case of a guy putting up his request for a kidney, I think, and then he went beyond and around the system, right? The distribution system. Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, it is exactly the problem we had in Belgium also a few months ago, and it is very unclear at this moment how ethically and how this should be organized. And for instance, in Europe there is a group trying to make consensus guidelines on how to deal with these, we call them Facebook donors. It's an important issue.
Because what is the ethical dilemma here?
The ethical dilemma is that only the people who have access to Facebook, so mostly young people, have access to this kind of donors, and many older people on dialysis waiting do not have access to Facebook and risk to have less access to this kind of transplantation. So there is ethical dilemmas that go with that. Also, for instance, there's juridic problems that could occur. So it is very important for the field to think about that, and that will be done at the session.
All right, sounds very exciting. Obviously, you can join us on Tuesday afternoon. I think 2 o'clock we start, but this session starts at 4. We have a long broadcast from 2 to 5:30. Final question about this session on you. Why are you personally involved in this topic?
Because I was involved in the Belgian case, so you just mentioned the Dutch cases, but in Belgium we also had a case. I was involved with that, and that made the whole thing starting, yes.
Okay, so you've got something to say about this. Well, let's move to your neighbor, Olivier. Welcome. What is one of your personal highlights on this conference program?
I must say it's quite difficult because there are a lot of very interesting topics. I have picked the future of human body. It's a session that will take place on Monday from 4 to 5. And all the speakers are of course amazing, and I don't want to, already kill the fun by telling everything, but I can already tell that there will be Dr. Bornström, who performed the first uterine transplantation, and this is an amazing topic and a brand new field in the transplantation.
Because why has that never been done before?
Well, you should ask him. I think he has devoted...
I think you're going to ask him, right? You're going to interview him in the Transplant Live Studio. But can you explain a bit, uterus transplants, why is that so rare in this field? Why is that so special?
What is special about that is that it brings transplantation in a field where transplantation has never really been tested, which is the problem of infertility. It's obviously a field that concerns a lot of people, a lot of women. And so there is this aspect, which is obviously a very important aspect because it seems that it's very useful for the people, for the patients. But there is another interesting aspect for people like me who are young and younger people that are interested in transplantation is the fact that this Dr. Bastrom, he devoted 20 years of his life building this project from nothing, and then finally performing the first successful uterine transplantation and the first birth after uterine transplantation. So it's an amazing story.
Exactly. The story of his persistence. And by the way, if you're watching right now and you don't have anything to do on Tuesday, you should join, because on the Tuesday broadcast, Olivier, you're going to interview Matt Ransom about the story of persistence and how this all came together. Finally, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned something about the dilemma of doing a transplant on issues that are not life-threatening.
Yes, it's this is something we are interested in my center, because we have pioneered the vascular composite allotransplantation in Lyon, but also we were working with other centers like Vienna, for example, and doing this transplantation for end transplantation, phase transplantation that are not vital organ are obviously asking questions that are different from the vital organs, and you have to think about whether it's worth putting patients on immunosuppressive drugs with increasing risk of infection and cancer, while they don't need these organs to live. But the truth is that without a face, you don't live. Okay? So it changed a bit the definition of what is living.
And that is some of the discussion.
Of course, and the same goes, for the uterine transplantation. It's not a vital organ, but I think that for a woman, it's probably something that it's worth considering. So the balance is very difficult, and beyond the science, beyond the immunology and the surgery, there are also all this ethical discussion that is very interesting and very important.
Well, very nice. We're looking forward to that. Monday, 4 o'clock. Gabriel, I mean, this is predictable. Before we start, I guess we should mention to our viewers, today is a very special day for you. Not only because you're doing a hell of a lot of things in this Congress, several sessions, several interviews here on Transplant Live, but September 13 also happens to be your birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So if you're watching right now, send them a tweet, send them a Facebook message. Happy birthday, #Transplant Live. But yeah, you were going to say?
Well, we were about to speak something, to sing something.
You're going to sing Happy Birthday live on the show?
Maybe at the end, depending on the number of viewers.
Okay, we'll do that. Well, let's say if you want these guys to sing Happy Birthday to Gabriel, you should send a tweet right now, #Transplant Live, or leave your comments in the comment box and we'll see if this happens. But back to the content, Gabriel. Same question to you. What is some of the most exciting session on your agenda?
I think I'll have to agree with Olivier here. It's quite difficult to pick one. And we, as a committee, we really try to cater for every taste and every interest and give people a chance to actually go through the journey and the meeting to get what they want. But for me in particular, the second plenary session of Men and Machine is probably the highlight, because it brings transplantation really at the cutting edge of what's developing nowadays and where we go as a human race in the future.
All right. So what kind of topics can we expect in that session?
So we will start with a very lively debate and ethical update of Asimov. And for everyone who read Asimov, these are the ground rules of robotics. But Dr. Plant from Ireland will actually challenge that and put that in the context of developments. I think transplantation relies on human organs. Now we're talking in this session about alternatives. And Wake Forest University have pioneered kidneys printed.
3D printed kidneys.
Printed kidneys, yeah, and functional ones as well. So Dr. Jackson will share his experience. Then we move tack a little bit to artificial organs. And if we think about dialysis and the need for kidney transplant being huge across the world and not enough kidneys, that is potentially one way of solving a problem. And I'm quite privileged to have Shuva Roy, one of the pioneers who's developed this kidney, to push this forward. And finally, the icing on the cake is Kevin Warwick, who is a leading professor of bioengineering and robotics in the United Kingdom. And
I think he's called the world's first cyborg, right?
Indeed, Kevin is recognized as the first world's cyborg, but I think he will share his experience and how he reached that name and where he's going from here. I think.
Because can you explain a bit what modifications did he do on his body?
From my understanding, and I'm not quite familiar with all of it, but he's implanted a chip which allows him to control from the distance other objects. So it's quite fascinating, and obviously after him, many others came around. But I think we will really look at the next human generation, as it were.
Exactly. Hey, and guys, if you had to zoom out a bit, what would you say in 2015 are the most challenging trends facing transplantation professionals at the moment? Maarten, you have an idea about that?
Well, I think that the outcome of our patients in many fields, in transplantation, in liver, kidney, lung, heart, intestinal transplantations, has improved importantly in the past decades. But still today we face organ shortages, as Gabi had just mentioned. We face rejection of organs. We face patients dying from cancer, from infections. And all these fields in transplantation need a great leap forward. And this kind of conference gives us an idea where we can go in the future and where we should go in the future. And that is, in my opinion, the importance of this conference.
And a lot of different solutions are being presented, from printing and growing organs into mechanical, electromechanical organs. How can viewers or delegates decide which way to go? How do you choose? Because they all seem like very far out options in the future. How do we determine, as a profession, what is most viable?
I think at this stage it's impossible to predict which of these options is going to win, and that's basically there is a session that is called Race Between Regenerative Medicine and Tolerance, because it's very difficult to know whether tackling chronic rejection will be done in the future by inducing tolerance, which is an old concept but is doing slow progress, or by generating new organs that will be syngenic, that will not be rejected at all because they will be from the same source of the recipient. And it's very difficult right now to look into the crystal ball and give a precise answer. So that's the reason why I think in this Congress we have, the three of us, we have put a lot of effort into trying to give a complete picture of the situation.
And what side of the spectrum are you on in that debate?
Well, this is a tricky question. I mean, as an immunologist,
for now,
yeah, as an immunologist, I would bet for tolerance, but I might be wrong.
Gabriel, would you also bet for tolerance?
No, just to be controversial with Olivier, I think the challenges are many, and I think what this Congress really adds is the fact that it reviews what's really hot topic, what's state of the art, but actually also stimulates imagination. It's pushing the boundary beyond what we currently do. And if we look back at the pioneers of transplantation that pushed this forward, that's exactly where they were 20, 30, 40 years ago, but in a different scenario. Now really we want to integrate the human body with developments, involve other specialties to actually allow us to move forward in a parallel direction. And I think that's, to me, the benefit of the transplant. And therefore, I wouldn't necessarily say tolerance, I would say increasing the availability of organs. I think until we cure a certain disease, we still need some form of replacement therapy, be it a transplant, be a human transplant, be an artificial one.
You agree?
No, in fact, if I could correct my answer, I think I would say that maybe the truth might be in the combination of all these solutions, rather than a single one. And that's precisely why it's important to present all of them.
To be here, yeah. Hey, and as a final question, if I may ask you, 2 years from now we're going to Barcelona. We look back at Brussels. Can you make a leap in time and give a comment on how you hope we look back at this Congress?
Well, it's called Big Bang Barcelona, and I think you'll have to be a pretty big bang to overtake Brussels.
And for you, Olivier?
Well, we will see how Gabi is handling with 1 year more, but he's handling pretty well.
Yeah.
And yes, well, no, for the moment I try to focus on Brussels. It was a lot of work to put everything together, and I'd like to enjoy this moment and hope it will be a success. So it's difficult for me to project into Barcelona right now.
Well, let's see, Maarten, if you have anything to add. 2 years down in Barcelona, how do we look back at this one?
I've been involved in transplantation now for 10 years, and I see every 2 years the ESOT meetings there is progress. Progress is sometimes slow, it is scientifically, but it is also organizationally, and this kind of progress is going forward, and Barcelona will be better than Brussels, but Brussels will hopefully be the most interesting congress we have had in the past 10 years. Let's do that.